Today marks a milestone that I'm rather proud of, and I wanted to share with all of you out there in YouTube land, whether you're just happening upon this or whether you're a regular viewer. And this milestone has to do not with YouTube itself, although it does indirectly, but rather with the Sadler's Lectures podcast. We have today released the 1,000th episode of the podcast, which I think is kind of a cool threshold to pass. And I thought we should do a little bit, make a few remarks about it, tell you a bit about the podcast to celebrate. And so, thanks for being here with me. I'm going to tell you a few things about the podcast, but, I do want to say it's 5 years in. It's kind of an awesome thing to do. Lots and lots of people have enjoyed it, benefited from it, said nice things about it. So, thanks to everybody out there who watches, shares, and has good things to say about the podcast. So if you don't know what the Sadler's Lectures podcast is, well, it's a podcast that is housed or hosted on SoundCloud, which is a very, common place to put podcasts, right? Perhaps one of 20 out there, I would say. And I decided, 5 years ago, that was the one that I was going to go with, and now that's where it is. Now, you can find all 1,000 episodes on SoundCloud. You can also find it on Spotify and Apple Music and everything under the sun, including probably some platforms that I don't even know about because everybody sucks from the same RSS feed. But you can only get the latest 500 episodes in all of those other platforms because that's the way they work. So I found out about this when I hit around the, 520th episode mark, and people were like, where's the old episodes? I can't find them. And I was like, well, you got to go to SoundCloud because that's where they are. Now, fortunately, I also have a page that I've linked to below where I've taken all of those podcast episodes, organized them into playlists on SoundCloud, where, by the way, you can also download them, every single one of them. And I've created this list of links that organizes all of these according to time period and what kind of text it is, whether it's about business ethics or about 20th century psychology or literature or philosophy, time period and type of content. So it's really easy to find. I mean, you can just type in Google Sadler's Lectures and you'll be surprised how many different things come up. And that's where you can find all of these episodes. And why did I do this in the first place? Well, for years prior to 2018, when I started the podcast, I had a lot of people leaving comments on my YouTube videos and saying things like, can I get this video in podcast format? Or, hey, you should start a podcast. It's not enough to have a YouTube channel. We want to listen to you. We want to be able to download your lectures and stuff like that. And so I thought about it and I was like, well, I don't know that I actually have the time for doing like a full proper podcast where people are, sipping coffee and chit-chatting and shooting the breeze and then getting into a topic and, kind of thinking about it together and all that. But I do have all these core concept videos that I've been producing for years and years and years that I give my students as resources and many other people use in their own academic classes, and lifelong learners love using to understand these texts, everything from, Parmenides and Heraclitus up to 21st century thinkers and everything in between. So why don't I start taking those and I'll, improve the sound quality, see what I can do to make it a much easier to listen to thing, take out the hiss or the sound of a echoey classroom, take out all the ums and ahs and and filler words and long pauses. And, I'll just produce them as podcast episodes and see if people like it. And as it turns out, people like it. They've been listening to it for quite a long time. I went in today and looked at the stats for the podcast, and what I found was really quite astonishing. Over the last 5 years, there have been 764,000 plays of episodes of this podcast on, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google's thing, Apple Music, Podtoppin, all these different platforms that are out there. So not quite 1 million, but 3/4 of the way to 1 million different listens. Now, of course, there's a lot of repeat customers, you could say, so it doesn't mean that 1 million people have listened to the podcast, but, it's a pretty good number. I would estimate I've probably reached at least 100,000 people out there interested in philosophy and literature and religion and politics and psychology and other topics as well. So anyway, I've been covering a wide range of different thinkers. And as I mentioned, you can find them all organized in that list. If you just, click Show More and go to the video description, you'll see that and a bunch of other links as well. So I thought it'd be, an appropriate time to take a little moment and celebrate hitting this milestone, crossing that threshold. My plans are to continue producing them. Maybe I'll produce another 1,000 more, maybe even more if people, like them. They turn out to be a very useful resource that I can give to my own students in face-to-face and online classes. I give to clients when they want to listen to things, and lots of other people I know are using them as well. Someday I'll probably do a proper podcast, but that day is not right now. I've got a lot of other projects that I'm doing. I do these in my spare time. Now, if you'd like to support the work that I do with this podcast, you might consider becoming a Patreon supporter. Again, link is below. I'll also tell you something, too. Patreon supporters, one of the perks that they get, early releases of these podcast episodes. So they're already at least 6 or 7 episodes ahead of you right now at any given time, because I generally will release as a batch these podcast episodes to them, and they get the first chance to listen and download to them, and then I release them to the general public. If there's other ways to support as well, buy me a coffee. You can go directly to Reason.io and just make a donation. If you're interested in sponsorship, I don't actually have any sponsors at this time. You can reach out to me about that. If you want to support the world of online philosophy, well, I'm one of those creators that you can help out. But if you just want to listen to them and download them, that's cool as well. That's what the majority of people all over the world are doing. Another thing that I found out that was really cool about the stats of the podcast, there's a map that it shows you, and literally on every continent except for Antarctica, there are people listening to this podcast, or at least have been listening to it. I didn't aggregate it by year or something like that, but North America, Europe, which are kind of expected, South America, Africa, Asia, Australia, or Oceania. People all over the world are checking out this podcast, in part because it delivers exactly what the title suggests. They're lectures by me about important philosophical texts and thinkers and topics. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time and chat with you about this cool milestone that I've passed. If you like the podcast, share it with people, say nice things about it. If you want to chip in and help me out with it, that's cool too. We're going to keep on with it. And hopefully, not too far down the line, we'll get to celebrate 1,500 and 2,000 and who knows how more episodes down the line. So that's all that I have for you. I just wanted to share that, nice little milestone that I've seen in my own professional life as an educator online with all of you who have been listening and contributing for years and years and years. So thanks for listening to the end of this. And if you haven't already checked out the podcast, go ahead and click that link and see all the different playlists that are available to you. And maybe you're going to hear something that you want to. If you're somebody who already does listen to the podcast, well, thanks for the support and the shares and the likes and all of that sort of stuff, and for the attention, which is a limited resource in our time. And I know that you could be listening to all sorts of other stuff. So if you're listening to the podcast, that's cool by me. And if you want to leave comments below, I'll check them out and respond to all of them. Otherwise, that's it for now.